Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive. What happens when a sports team becomes, almost entirely too successful for its own good?
Yeah, it's the ultimate paradox, isn't it?
Right, because for you listening, your national team winning back-to-back world championships is the absolute pinnacle. Like, it is the dream.
Oh, absolutely.
But the immense financial cost of maintaining that global dominance is exactly what might price you out of ever seeing them play in person again. The success you prayed for becomes the luxury you can no longer afford.
It is a brutal irony. I mean, the culture of a rugby team is built by the everyday working class supporters, right?
Yeah,
The ones who sing in the rain and travel on these dilapidated buses to watch local club games.
exactly.
But when that team reaches the absolute summit of the sport, the economics just shift. Suddenly, the romantic ideal of the game collides violently with the reality of a multi-million-dollar entertainment business.
Which is why we are thrilled you were joining us. And hey, before we really get into it, make sure you hit that button and subscribe to Rugby Obsession.
Yeah, definitely subscribe so you don't miss any of our analysis.
Because today we are turning our attention to the upcoming South African Springboks home tests in the inaugural Nations Championship this July.
And we're drawing from a really revealing Planet Rugby article for this.
Yep, an article that details SA Rugby's ticket sales strategy for these fixtures. And more importantly, how the organization is attempting to navigate, a severe public relations crisis from the previous year.
Right, the backlash was intense.
It really was. So for you listening right now, our mission is to decode the mechanics of this situation. We want to understand the delicate balancing act between the high-stakes economics of top-tier sports and maintaining access for the everyday fan.
It's a tricky balance.
Very tricky. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, to truly grasp why these ticket prices are causing such a stir, we can't just look at a spreadsheet. We have to start on the grass.
Makes sense.
The financial demand is entirely dictated by the caliber of the upcoming athletic contest. And the context of this specific July window is uniquely intense.
Yeah, let's lay out the schedule for this July 2026 campaign because it is an absolute gauntlet.
It really is.
First up, the Springboks are hosting England at the iconic Ellis Park Stadium in Johannesburg.
Massive game.
Massive. Then they move to Pretoria to take on Scotland at Loftus Versfeld. After that, it is down to the coast to play Wales at Kings Park Stadium in Durban.
And there's a warm-up in there too, right?
Right. Just as a primer for all of that heavy lifting, the Mingoms are warming up against the Barbarians in Gqeberha on June 20th.
So you're looking at three of the most intimidating high-altitude or high-humidity venues in world rugby against three core British nations.
Yeah.
But the underlying tension here isn't just about the names on the marquee, it's about physical readiness.
Exactly. And this is the dynamic that I find so incredibly compelling. Like, think of match fitness like building up a physical callus on your hands.
Okay, I like that.
If you spend 2 months chopping wood, your hands get tough. By July, teams like England, Scotland, and Wales have just spent 2 months chopping wood in the Six Nations tournament.
They really have.
They've built up profound physical and tactical calluses. But the Springboks,
Yeah.
they're jumping onto a treadmill that's already running at full speed. They are coming in with soft hands. They are just starting their international season.
That callus metaphor perfectly illustrates the physiological deficit at play here. Because the Six Nations isn't just a series of games. It is an absolute meat grinder.
Right.
Players are taking bone-crunching hits, they're executing complex defensive systems under extreme fatigue, and experiencing high-stress test match conditions week after week.
They are completely battle-hardened.
Exactly. The Springboks, conversely, are emerging from what SA Rugby calls alignment camps.
Which, I always hear that term thrown around. What exactly is an alignment camp doing for a player compared to a live test match?
Well, an alignment camp is essentially a theoretical exercise.
Okay.
It's a lot of whiteboard sessions, walking through tactical plays at half speed, and ensuring players from disparate domestic clubs are using the same terminology.
Right, getting everyone on the same page.
It's crucial, but it's not violent. You cannot simulate the cardiovascular shock and physical trauma of a live international test match in a padded training session.
Yeah, you really can't.
So the Northern Hemisphere teams arrive at peak tournament intensity, while the Books have to survive a brutal adjustment period in real time.
Which brings me to the Springbok head coach, Erasmus, who has been incredibly vocal about this exact deficit.
He has.
But I want to challenge this narrative for a second because Rassie is famous for his media manipulation.
Very true.
Is he just playing mind games here to artificially lower public expectations? Or is this a genuine existential threat to the back-to-back world champions?
What's fascinating here is how meticulously Erasmus analyzes the specific threats of these opponents, rather than just offering vague coach speak.
Right, he gets specific.
Very specific. If you look at his quotes in the source material, he is actively pointing out proven tactical realities. For instance, he doesn't just say England is tough.
Right.
He highlights England's real grit during the Six Nations, specifically noting how they dragged the eventual champions France into a deep, agonizing physical battle in Paris.
Yeah, that was a brutal game.
He is warning his squad that England has the proven capacity to endure pain and keep fighting.
And he certainly didn't stop with England. He had a lot to say about the Scottish and Welsh squads, too.
Precisely. With Scotland, he isolates a very specific data point. They were the only team to beat France in the entire tournament. They
Right.
finished third overall, taking scalps from both England and Wales. Erasmus recognizes them not as plucky underdogs, but as a highly sophisticated attacking force.
And for Wales.
Regarding Wales, he points to their structural development and a critical high-pressure victory over Italy. He's explicitly admitting to the public that the Books have a physiological vulnerability, stating they have to hit the ground running.
So it's not a trick.
No, it is absolutely not a mind game. It is a clinical diagnosis of a severe threat.
Okay, so knowing how incredibly dangerous Scotland, England, and Wales are right now presents SA Rugby with a fundamental dilemma. And just a quick reminder for our listeners, if you're enjoying this deep dive, take a second to subscribe to Rugby Obsession.
Yes, please do.
So, to beat battle-hardened teams, the Springboks cannot just rely on talent. They need world-class preparation.
Exactly.
They need elite sports science, cutting-edge analytics, specialized medical staff, premium logistical support. All of that requires immense, almost unfathomable amounts of capital.
Yes, and that financial necessity immediately collides with the fans standing outside the stadium gates.
Right.
Because the union only has so many ways to generate that kind of revenue, and match day ticketing is a primary artery.
Which brings us to the harsh reality and the severe public relations disaster of last year's season. The fan base was absolutely furious over the ticket pricing,
Oh, it was a massive backlash.
particularly for the test matches against Australia and Cape Town. We are talking about the absolute cheapest seats, the nosebleeds, right at the back of the stadium, starting at a baseline of R525. That's about 23 pounds.
Right. And to understand the outrage, you have to look at that R525 figure through the lens of local purchasing power.
Yeah, contextualize that for us.
In the context of the South African economy, R525 is not a casual expense. If an average working-class father wants to take his two kids to see their heroes play, you're talking about R1,575 just to get in the building.
Wow.
Add in transport, a bit of food, parking, and that single 80-minute experience suddenly consumes a devastating percentage of a standard monthly salary.
Which is heartbreaking. I mean, I understand the romance of the sport, but isn't that just a marketing illusion at this point?
It feels like it sometimes.
When a national union prices out the vast majority of its own population, how does that impact the core spirit of the sport for the fans listening right now who just want to support their team? You aren't buying a spot in history. You're just renting a piece of plastic seating for 2 hours. Yeah.
If stadiums are only filled with corporate suites and elite earners, the atmosphere dies.
It is a critical systemic tension. And to his credit, SA Rugby CEO Rian Oberholzer addressed the outrage directly.
What did he say?
He stated, and I will quote the article here, "We've taken notice of what people have been saying about ticket prices, and we've changed the model to try and accommodate as many spectators as possible in the stadiums while still fulfilling our need to fund our national teams and grow the game at all levels."
Fund our national teams and grow the game. That is the ultimate double-edged sword. You need the fans' passion, but passion doesn't pay the physiotherapist.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you uncover the actual mechanism of how a modern sports union operates.
Right.
It functions remarkably like a volatile national economy. You have your elite flagship product, the Springboks, which requires tens of millions to operate.
Yeah.
But SA Rugby also has to fund the women's teams, the Sevens program, the under-20 squads, and crucial grassroots development in impoverished areas to ensure there is a next generation of talent. So they're subsidizing everything else.
Yes. The union relies on the revenue generated by the flagship team to subsidize the entire rest of the sport. If they underprice the tickets to a massive test match, they aren't just losing profit, they are potentially bankrupting a youth academy.
But they also know that if they purely chase maximum yield on every single seat, They destroy the goodwill of the exact demographic they are supposedly representing.
It is an impossible tightrope.
It really is. So Oberholzer promised they changed the model for this inaugural Nations Championship. Let's look at the actual numbers released to see if they delivered on that promise for these specific July fixtures.
Well, the union introduced a highly structured tiered pricing strategy. They abandoned the idea of a flat, exorbitant baseline for the entire summer.
Right, let's break down the tiers. For the opening blockbuster clash against England in Johannesburg, the absolute cheapest tickets start at R450, which is about £20. For the subsequent match against Scotland in Pretoria, that entry price drops down to R375, roughly £16.50. And for the final test against Wales in Durban, the starting price drops significantly again, down to R250, or about £11.
That segmentation is a radical departure from last year's approach. They are no longer pricing the product purely on the fact that the Springboks are playing. They are pricing the product based on the specific historical value of the opponent.
It reminds me of the underlying economics of a massive music festival.
Oh, how so?
Like a tiered subscription service or concert pricing. You pay a premium for the historical headliner, in this scenario, England. But there are more accessible entry points for other massive acts, like Wales. You still get the festival experience, but you have financial options.
That's a great way to look at it.
But wait, why does the opponent matter so much for the baseline price? A seat costs the stadium the exact same amount to clean and staff, whether the Boks are playing England or playing Wales.
The physical maintenance of the seat costs the same, yes, but the psychological demand of the market is vastly different. What SA Rugby is monetizing here is historical scarcity.
How does that scarcity actually map out for these specific teams?
According to the source, England has not played a test match on South African soil since 2018.
Wow, 2018.
In the brutal, high-turnover world of international rugby, 8 years is an eternity.
Yeah, that's a whole career for some guys.
Exactly. Entire generations of legendary Springboks have debuted, won World Cups, and retired since the English last toured there. The local fans are starved for that specific rivalry.
And the drought with Scotland is even more extreme, isn't it?
Significantly more.
Yeah.
Scotland has not played in South Africa for 12 long years.
12 years.
Think about how much the sport, the tactics, and the players have evolved in over a decade. So when the union sets that R450 baseline for England, or the R375 for Scotland, they're calculating that the sheer rarity of the event will force the market to absorb the premium. Wales, however, was hosted much more recently in 2022. Because the nostalgia factor is lower, the entry price drops to R250.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If you look at that initial warm-up clash against the Barbarians down in Graberha, the tickets for that match are also matching the absolute lowest tier, starting at R250. This shows a deliberate strategy to provide multiple affordable options compared to that R525 baseline of the previous year. They aren't just throwing a single token-cheap game at the public to quiet the complaints.
No, it is a deliberate mechanism of cross-subsidization. Essentially, the union is utilizing the incredibly high demand for the England match, packing the stadium with high-end corporate hospitality and R450 baseline tickets to effectively subsidize the lower costs for the Wales and Barbarians game.
Ah, I see.
They are taxing the wealthy and the corporate sector on the headliner matches to ensure they can keep the gates open for the working class on other weekends.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. It proves they actually listen to the severe backlash. You get the premium revenue from the historic droughts, but you leave a tangible lifeline for the fan who desperately wants to wear the green and gold and lose their voice in the stands.
And preserving that lifeline is not just about good public relations, it's about the long-term survival of the sports ecosystem.
Yeah.
If an 8-year-old child never gets to experience the visceral roar of a crowd because their family can't afford the entry fee, you don't just lose a ticket sale today, you lose a potential future Springbok or a lifelong supporter tomorrow.
So true.
This tiered model is SA Rugby's desperate attempt to stop that cultural bleeding while simultaneously feeding the immensely expensive machinery required to win World Cups.
So to pull all of these threads together for you listening right now, the Springboks are about to step onto the field this July facing a profound physiological disadvantage. They have a massive on-field test against Six Nations veterans from England, Scotland, and Wales.
Yep, a massive challenge.
But the drama off the field is arguably just as intense. SA Rugby is conducting a massive off-field experiment in sports economics to win back the goodwill of the fans. So what does this all mean?
Well,
It means that the business of rugby has fundamentally changed. Governing bodies are finally realizing that they cannot simply point to a shiny World Cup trophy to justify infinitely rising costs for the consumer. There is a definitive breaking point for fan loyalty.
there absolutely is.
And this new segmented tier system is their course correction.
This raises an important question, particularly as we look toward the horizon of the sport.
Yeah.
As global tournaments like the inaugural Nations Championship create more frequent high-stakes blockbusters between the hemispheres year after year.
Because the density of these massive games is only going to increase.
Exactly. Will this complex, tiered pricing model be the blueprint that saves the everyday fans access to the stadium? Or, as the relentless cost of funding back-to-back world champions continues to surge, will it eventually price the average supporter out of the stadium experience forever?
It's a huge question. We want to know what you think. Please drop your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. We read all of them. And don't forget to subscribe to Rugby Obsession.